Hello, everyone, and welcome to Interrel's webcast this week. My name is Carol Krajewski. I'm a principal consultant with Interrel, and I'm your webcast host today. Yay! So thanks so much for joining me. I do appreciate it. Should you have any questions as we're going through, please type them in the chat, and then I will get back to you at the end of this webcast. Today, we will be discussing the 5 steps to understanding profitability and why it's so critical in these changing times. So we'll be covering what costs should you allocate, what drivers you should use to allocate those costs, what level you want to allocate to, different methodologies you might want to try, and finally, the technology that you may want to implement. Before we deep dive into those 5 steps, though, let's step back and make sure that we all understand profitability. Yeah, I think we all know it, but do we really? Let's take a look. Yeah, there's the simple formula. Gross profit equals revenue less cost of goods sold, right? At most companies, revenue is well understood. We can track revenue by location, product, customer, channel, whatever way we want, usually. That's not always true, however. Determining revenue by a lead source, let's say, like marketing campaigns, how do you know which marketing campaigns are really getting the highest revenue return? That's where it becomes a little more challenging. But in general, we have a good idea of revenue, cost of goods sold, pretty straightforward at a unit level, right? So we can figure that out. Where it starts to get messy is when we have payrolls that are not tracked by customer, product, service, and so on. That's hard enough. Then we get to operating expenses, and those are often tracked maybe at a department level, maybe by cost center, and not at the profit center level where the revenue sits. So now you have these kind of unclaimed expenses out there with profit, but no expenses to kind of figure that out. I should say revenue really sitting there, not profit, and no way to figure out what that profit would be. So it usually works a little bit better, at least if you have factories and you're in manufacturing, right? Because, hey, the factory's making products X, Y, and Z, so I can allocate those costs. Really? How are you going to do that? It starts to get a little harder even when we talk about indirect costs. That's when you realize that a lot of your costs are kind of hidden, really. They're on the P&L. Okay, don't worry about it. It's not like we don't lose them. We're just not necessarily accounting for them when it comes to looking at a detailed profitability analysis. That's where it starts to really get tricky. We don't necessarily know what our profit is at a product level, a customer level. They kind of all go into that indirect cost bucket, and unless we allocate them, that's kind of where they stay. So as we look at this lovely iceberg, to me, indirect costs is definitely that problem area that's underwater. And until we dig it out and we figure it out, we suffer. Not suffer, I mean, I'm making it very dramatic, aren't I? But I mean, you may not be getting a true picture. And that's what I really want to talk about today, is getting you a true picture of your profitability. So for most companies, you know your net income. I mean, come on. As we said, the formula, super easy, right? Everybody knows that. It's pretty clear. But what when we start to get down to product level, customer level? We don't necessarily calculate things at a particular level. And especially, I mean, you know, during normal times, that's challenging enough, right? But in these quickly changing, troublesome times, it's really hard for us to take corrective action if we don't know who the problem children are, for lack of a better way to explain that. I mean, if I don't know what products are sucking me out of all my resources, but yet not profitable, how can I fix that? I don't know how to fix it. So that's why Profitability 101 is a little more complicated today and requires a little more attention from us today. Hugely important to understand our detailed profitability, but many companies aren't even calculating it. They don't understand what areas are draining cash until they are already running out of cash. It's too late then. We need to be able to have information that's going to let us take very decisive, quick action and fix the problem before it's too late. As a general rule, you've got to know, hey, during normal times, I know which one of my products are profitable. Do I? Okay, yeah, I say I do. Okay. I know which customers I should be selling to. I've got that. I know where I should price my products. I understand that. I understand I'm selling the right product mix and all that. It's pretty straightforward, right? It's normal times. I can forecast easily. Life's pretty good for me. I understand my 10 most profitable customers and products and my least. Life's good in normal times. I've got it. Because in normal times, yeah, things change, but they don't change overnight, or they don't change inside of a few minutes or inside of an hour. I'll give you an hour, okay? So normal times, yeah, it's good. I don't need that detailed profitability Carol's talking about. Yeah, good luck, go. However, now, when the economy is going into a recession, it becomes critical. You don't have that much time to act anymore. So you really have to start prioritizing, determining your most and least profitable customers, products, locations, services, whatever business you're in. You need to start assessing that. You need to know where's your high risk, where are you bleeding? How can you fix it? We have to focus on securing who and what is making us money and who and what is not. We have to stop, at least temporarily, the areas costing us money. We have to know what our true break-even point is, so we know how low we can drop our pricing until we might as well stop selling that product altogether. Once we know where our money is coming from, we have to look at those regions and the customers and locations in those regions to see if they're lining up with the coronavirus outbreak. Are we in danger there? Is there a problem there? Times are very different now. Suddenly, our profitability may be pivoting because of conditions way outside of our control. So let's try and control what we can before it becomes absolutely crazy. Oh, too late, I know. Strategic P&Ls tell a great story, and everybody loves them. How good are they if you're not truly allocating your costs to the correct level? Everybody's looking for a different view. Your marketing executives, oops, sorry about that, guys, whoops. Oh, goodness, sorry there, that's better. Your marketing executives want to know where to make money so they can plan advertising budgets, right? Yep, they got to get it right. Your sales organization, a lot of pressure on them. Focus more on the who's buying, so they can set the correct sales targets and quotas. Your operation managers, they're scrambling to figure out the what and how so they can balance supply and demand. It's constantly changing today. Your merchandisers, are they even going to survive? Can you even afford brick and mortar stores, let's say, anymore? How many have to close? How soon? Corporate level executives really just want to know when. They have to set the profit expectations. That's a very challenging job, man. Everyone wants different views of your profitability. How are you going to deliver that to them? We have to make sure that we're sharing this extremely important profitability information. So we understand we have to share it. The problem really is, a lot of times the key metrics are not at that right level of detail. Expense data is not captured. That's kind of what my theme is today. So we all know we need it. So why don't we calculate it? Part of the problem is that there are no standards for allocating these costs. And if you do allocations, Where do you put the data after you've allocated it? After you've done the calculations, you've got all this great data, lovely. Where does it go? I'm going to put it in my general ledger. I'll force it in there. Ooh, stuff it in there. General ledger. I hope you don't explode. Why are you overburdening your general ledger? Stop it. Even in the best of times, I say don't put it there. No one listens, but I say don't put it there. Okay? Even in the best of times, normally, I would never recommend that you overburden your general ledger with these allocated costs. That's not the right place for it. We're going to talk about tools and technology a little bit later. But understand that we can allocate it, just don't put it there. Because you know why? It also takes a really long time to implement that general ledger solution. And when we're on coronavirus time, as we are today, there's just no way you can write all that code and implement those allocations in less than 30 days. Okay? So during coronavirus time in particular, I'm going to say to you, no to that general ledger option. It takes way too much time to implement. So just forget about it. We're going to talk about other options that are a whole lot better. So there are 5 steps to building a profitability application, and that's what I'm going to now walk you through. What are those 5 steps? How do I get there? How do I start to understand my detailed profitability? That's what I really need to do. The first step is to even figure out what cost should you allocate. You have to identify the costs, or in some cases we allocate revenue too. Some of your costs will already really be at the right level. You may already have costs that are at the lowest level of product, customer, location, channel, whatever it is. Okay, so those don't need to be allocated. They're there. They're ready for a detailed profitability analysis. But if you have some of those costs, like your salaries or something that you're paying, or maybe you have shared services, maybe your IT department, maybe you need to allocate out your IT costs. Those will need to be allocated in order to give you a proper picture of your profitability. What are the costs to be allocated? This can be a really challenging question because, as you can see kind of from that scale on the right side there, it's all about, if I go to a really granular level, yeah, that's going to give you great data. Is it going to give you too much data? Because it is more complex and it does take a little more time. However, so a balancing act, always a trade-off, right? If you go into a cost pool, higher level, right? It's a little less accurate, more agile. I can do that a whole lot quicker. I can do scenario analysis. However, it's not, therefore, as complex, and it doesn't give me as deep a look into my costs, perhaps. So maybe I need to go deeper than that. So you'll have some overhead costs that definitely need to be allocated to some level. Could be all the way down to a unit if that's what you choose to do, or maybe just that cost pool again. So there are benefits to both. But what I ask of you, like, this can sometimes even seem overwhelming, like, oh, I can't even think about this right now. There's so much going on. What I say to you is that the journey of 1,000 miles starts with 1 step. So the first step is just really taking a look. Take a look at that P&L and see if you have an indirect heading. Great place to start, okay? That's a great place to start when you start thinking about, well, what do I need to allocate? Sounds so simple. And I don't mean to make it sound like it's, oversimplify it, because trust me, it's not always straightforward. So once we have the cost, the second step is figuring out the drivers. What numbers will you use to allocate your costs? What are these drivers? And are they currently being captured at the appropriate level somewhere in a system somewhere? If not, you'll need to maybe use different drivers to start pushing costs and revenue down level by level in what's called a multi-step allocation. Maybe some drivers need to be calculated as long as the data is available. So step 1, what costs? Step 2, basically, how are you going to allocate it? What drivers will you use? We have to identify the drivers for each cost element. Some drivers that I frequently see used are things like units sold, product weight, square footage, headcount. Those can all be drivers, but those are not the only drivers. Every business is unique. So you have to think about, how am I going to allocate those costs? What makes sense? What's fair? Is the driver data captured in a system? We have to determine if it is. If not, we have to find a way to input the drivers, and it can be done. So can it be loaded or input? Do people have confidence in the accuracy of that data? They need to. We need to make sure that it's just not some made up number. You know, oh, jeepers, I feel like it should be, 20% today. I'm in a 20% kind of mood. That's not going to cut it. And you guys know that, I'm sure. But it has to be data that people have confidence in and agree that, okay, that's right, and it's fair. It's when you're talking about allocations, I almost feel accuracy, of course, super important, but fairness really comes into play as well. As long as we can say it's accurate and fair, most people will eventually start to understand. What are some of the assumptions you're making as you go through, coming back to that fairness, right? So we have to figure out, for instance, we have sales managers and sales support team that supports all the sales reps. And let's just say that they support them equally across the board. How are we going to weight the allocations then for the cost of those sales managers and sales support? How are we going to allocate that out to our sales reps? What's fair? What assumptions will we make? So when we're talking about drivers, we want to remember, what are they? Are they captured somewhere? Do we maybe need to calculate them? Are they fair? Do people trust that data? And what assumptions are we going to kind of wrap around those drivers? Now that we have our costs and we know what drivers we're using, the next step is to determine the appropriate level to analyze profitability at a detailed level. So we're talking by product, by customer, by service, geography. What information, once allocated, would cause you to take a different physical action? I love that question. So as you're thinking and you're designing your profitability, that should kind of be like the overriding theme. If I knew I was profitable at this particular level, it would completely change the game. Bing, 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 bing. That's what we need to know. That's where we need to get to. If you knew at this particular level that if you took action, you stopped making that product, you could be more profitable overall, that is super important. That's key. So when we start thinking about levels, start thinking about, how do you normally think of your revenue or categorize your revenue? You may be doing some of this today already. So how do you do it? Review all of your different business attributes that you may want to throw in here. Think about things like customer product, big ones, right? Service, if you're in the service industry, maybe hospital days, patient care, that kind of thing. If you're in healthcare, maybe you want to go to a region, state, zip code level. Okay. Sales reps, maybe you want to analyze it by your sales reps. Maybe you want to look at it by your managers of different offices or different areas. That might be another way to take a look at your revenue. So you want to start by thinking about, how do you categorize and think about your business today? Next, you want to identify how and if that data is captured. If so, where is it sitting? Can we get to it? Do you need to include every desired attribute? Should you include every possible business attribute, or just the most important? As always, with everything, when I ask you questions like that, it's a balancing act. You need to balance the amount of attributes with time and complexity. The more you put into your system, remember, we're trying to get this done quick, within, let's say, 6 weeks at the most, the harder it is to hit that 6-week mark or that 30-day mark, okay? Just because we have the technology to let us allocate to a zip code level does not mean that's how you want to see your data. Again, knowing it at a zip code level, does that help you implement a change in your business? that will improve your profitability. If you answer yes, then by all means, go to zip codes. If you answer no, then don't. Go to zip codes. Okay? Oh, I'm getting sharp now. What level of detail do you need for each attribute? Do you need to go to an SKU, or will product category be sufficient? If you're in healthcare, do you need it at a patient level, or would the service that was rendered be sufficient? So how deep is deep? Okay, again, keeping in mind, if you're trying to do a quick win here, if you go crazy with that level of detail, it takes longer to implement. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Finally, who's going to really be doing the analyzing? And are they knowledgeable? Now, doesn't that sound like a silly question? I'm saying, are they knowledgeable enough to take different action based on the information that you're providing to them? That is really a key question. You know, we're doing all this great reporting and all this great analysis. Is it in a fashion that they can easily interpret and use very quickly? So are they knowledgeable enough to take the next step, which would be to implement a change? The fourth step is where we start to get a little bit trickier. It might be challenging for you already, but there are no generally accepted cost accounting practices. So when it comes to methodology, while let's just say there's plenty of options to choose from. So which costing allocation method should you use? Really, it's up to you. You know your business best. Do you have to pick just one? Great questions. So the simple answer is, of course, there is not just one method, right? There's just, I don't even have them all listed here because the slide would go on forever. There are many methods to choose from. There is no one that is correct, right? And in normal times, you would probably honestly use multiple methods. You have to kind of weigh your options and determine the right method, again, keeping in mind that what we want is a quick implementation. So you want to be thinking about that. Again, normal times, we would probably have multiple methodologies. We might have very complex methodologies. That's going to be in a normal time situation. You would likely use a combination. I rarely in normal times see someone just come in and say, oh yeah, I use multi-step, that's it. That's all I do, multi-step. I never see that. So it's usually multiple types. But again, not normal times, right? We've got this coronavirus going around, and we have to choose a method that's going to get you up and running the quickest. So when times are very troublesome, they're changing rapidly like this, we need to know what is profitable for you, what customers, what products, and you need to know it right now. You cannot wait. So you have to choose a method that's going to be quick. Now, some of you may be familiar with what we call a peanut butter spread. Granted, that is a method, and it is a quick method. But a peanut butter spread basically takes it and just spreads it evenly. So when it comes to a detailed analysis of profitability, a peanut butter spread is just not helpful. Has its purpose, just not what we're looking for here at this particular time. The final step is where you actually start implementing what you've designed. It's time, well, you should really probably have been thinking about a tool all along, but it's time to pick a tool, a technology. Here at Interrel, we use Oracle EPM Cloud Enterprise. We are using the pre-built profitability and cost management process, and we are using it constantly and love it. So whatever technology you use, it should let business people, not IT. We don't have a lot of coders sitting around coding, no. And we are a technology company, so we certainly have the expertise. But what I love about profitability and cost management is that it is written for business people to use. It is very easy to use, and it also provides transparency into all levels of your allocations. I have I've been doing EPM for well over 20 years, and I've written a lot of allocation scripts in my time. And probably the number one question after you do an allocation, someone comes back and they'll say, why did you allocate this to me? And why is it so much? I wasn't expecting it. And then you have to go back through the code and, well, let me see, this happened and that happened and this happened, you know, and several days later, if you're lucky, you can finally answer the question. With this particular tool, PCM, you can literally go in and say, oh, here it is. The rule says I did this, this, and this, and here's the allocation. There you go. And you can provide information immediately. So it's that transparency that is important for profitability to succeed. It's about being transparent at all levels. So as you look and evaluate tools, keep that in mind. Super easy. Business users should be able to create the application. They should be able to maintain it, and there should be transparency. Profitability and cost management is understanding your true profitability. This really could be the key to your survival. You need to use whatever technology will get you the results you can use now, okay? That's what's important. Do you truly understand which of your customers are profitable or unprofitable? And how has that changed in light of the current economic environment? Very trying times. What percentage of my customers, products, channels, whatever it is, however you're measuring your profitability, are they still profitable? How do you know? What's driving most of your profitability? Which ones are unprofitable? And you have limited resources. Where should you be focusing your resources? What proportion of resources are your customers, products, channels consuming? Who's using it all up? Maybe they shouldn't be because they're not even profitable. So what are your true costs to provide services or complete a business process? Do you know? If you don't, we've got some advice. And remember, a good tool will help you take your higher level scenario plans and your strategic models and allocate them down to a granular level so you can perform a profitability analysis on your scenario planning and on your strategic models as well. A good technology will help you. A bad technology just gets in your way. We've all been there, I'm sure. Got the scars to prove it, right? So just to review the 5 steps to profitability. First, we have to figure out what costs, maybe revenue, usually it's cost, do we need to allocate? Next, what are the drivers? How do we allocate? What numbers are we going to use to drive those costs home? What level do we need to allocate to? Again, what is the appropriate level to drive a different physical action? Okay, we need to make sure that as we're setting up this application, it's going to, in the end, deliver information to us to allow us to take a different course if we need to. And I'm sure we do. Next, methodology. How are we going to allocate? And again, in trying times, chances are we may not use as many methods as we would during what we would call normal times. If we're ever going to see normal again, who knows? And then finally, you want to pick the right technology. What tool can you use to implement quickly? So profitability life cycle, what do you do with all this information? So there are 4 stages in the profitability life cycle. Each one is feeding into the next until it becomes a flywheel. So stage 1 is reporting. This is where you're going to answer the what questions. What happened? This is where the organization measures their profitability with key performance indicators by asking questions such as, which products have the highest margins? Who are the most profitable customers? Additional questions along those lines. Stage 2 is analysis. This is where you get to root causes. Why are these products more profitable than those products? What's going on here? Why are they more profitable? Next, the organization has to search for the meaning behind those KPIs and figure out the why. Why are some customers more profitable than others? What's going on there? And how the variable and overhead costs that you allocated come into play in the mix. Stage 3 is where management now has the necessary data information. They know what needs to be done, and we are now asking them to take this information and make the necessary change. This information is absolutely useless unless we take action. The organization has to do something with all of this wonderful fancy reporting and analysis and transform this analysis into tangible actions. Go forth and make the change. That's what we're asking at this time. Finally, we're going to wrap up with planning. The final stage. This is where we determine when will these changes make an impact. Because it doesn't do any good to change something if it doesn't modify your course, it should lead you to a different set of numbers than you originally forecasted. That's really truly that's what should happen. That's why you went through this exercise. And once you have a new plan of action and it's underway, you're going to go right back to the first stage. Start reporting, start the analysis. Is additional change needed? Implement that change, take a look at your plan, and complete your flywheel over and over. Your resources are extremely limited right now, and we understand that. So I ask you this question: where do you need to focus your resources to increase your profits? That's what understanding profitability is all about. For additional information and updates, feel free to go to interrel.com/updates. We are constantly updating that website with all kinds of interesting financial information. And on the road of keeping you informed, we have a series of webcasts coming up in June. We have one on cash flow on June 3rd. There's a reporting webcast on June 10th. Data visualization coming up on June 17th. And long live S-Base, the present and the future. S-Base is not dead, contrary to the rumors you may have heard on June 24th. This one on July 1st sounds really interesting to me: from data to story in 30 minutes or less. I thank you all for joining me today, and I just wanted to let you know that if you're sitting there thinking, how can I implement this? This sounds really cool. We have created a PCM application that we can implement in 6 weeks for you. It is called a RACE PCM. I'm just going to switch to the next slide for a minute. And that is a rapid cloud evolution. So it includes the 5 steps that we've just covered: simplified cost pools, we have standard cost drivers, and we've done all this to help you discover your hidden profits and costs. So we are just trying to help you take the correct action. You can see the timeline, and if you'd like any other information, feel free to contact us at info@interrel.com. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a moment and check if there are any questions. There are no questions at the moment. So again, I thank you.